once my parents divorced, I think I kind of like, since I don't have my mom there, because my mom was the one that was taking care of him. But then when they divorced, my mom and my sister left. So it was just me and her. And that was kind of the first time where like, I'm on my own. I don't have any help from anybody else. So I gotta put all my effort into this. And, you know, part of it was I have to take care of my dad, but part of it was like, it goes back to that anger. And I felt angry that my mom left my dad because she was supposed to be there, because I was raised with the old fashioned, the values of being there in sickness and in health. That was instilled in me as a kid.
This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolate, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Putting.
Welcome to another chat and coffee break. I hope you've got your favourite cuppa and your chocolate and you're ready to listen to another amazing story. So, what happens when we quietly put our lives on hold because someone we love is suffering? We often judge people's behaviour without knowing the story behind it. It's easy to look at someone's life and see where they are now. What's harder is seeing the years that have shaped how they've got there. Sometimes people carry things so quietly that the world never notices: grief, responsibility, guilt, anger, not because they're hiding it, but because they've simply learned to keep going. And sometimes those unseen burdens shape decisions for years. So today I'm sharing with chocolate and coffee with Aaron Watts, and I'm looking forward to sharing his story with you. Welcome, Aaron.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming along. And I like to start the show with a heart opening question. And my question for you today is, when someone takes the time to really know you, what do they discover that most people miss?
Uh, let's see. I think it's a lot of it has to do with what you see is not what you get. Um, I'm covered in tattoos. I got kind of a biker look to me. Um, but once they get to know me, I'm a very kind of down to earth, shy kind of person, kind of reserved. Um, but they also find out that I don't touch cigarettes, I don't touch drugs, I don't touch alcohol, any of that sort of thing. So the look of what I look like and what people assume are just usually completely opposites. I'm really like that proverbial nice guy. And I think that's what throws a lot of people off because I get people coming up to me all the time asking for cigarettes, alcohol, even drugs and weed and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not that kind of person. I've never been to jail, never been arrested, never been in a fight in my life. So it's that whole perception of what I look like and what I really am is really it throws a lot of people off. And a lot of people have said, hey, you're not what I expected. So it's kind of a fun thing, but
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's a real lesson for us to not judge the book by the cover, because what somebody who somebody is not necessarily what somebody else's perception is. So it's an important thing for us to be aware of.
oh, I completely agree. And I used to do it when I was younger, but as I've gotten older and wiser, you really can't judge somebody on just by what they look like. Because sometimes people kind of put out a different kind of, I guess, energy out there. And, they try to present themselves as kind of like a tough person or, loud or obnoxious. But in reality, if you really get to know them, they are a completely different person behind the scenes, you know. But I think a lot of people go out into the world and they kind of project themselves in a certain light. So sometimes it's a defense mechanism, sometimes it's something else. But yeah, it's definitely happens, and it's a good idea to never judge somebody just by how they look until you really get to know them, because you actually 9 times out of 10 you'll probably be really surprised.
Yes. Yes, I think so. Think that's very true. So I'll just share some of your story, Aaron. When you were a child, your father was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And but I'd like to go back before that and just say, who were you before your father was diagnosed? What was
I was a pretty fun-loving kid. I was pretty outspoken. I loved life. I loved learning things. Me and my dad were really inseparable. He taught me how to work on cars, and he was down there playing Hot Wheels with us and Lincoln Logs and Legos, and I was very much into family and holidays, and I mean, I looked forward to everything. Everything was, I can look back and go, you know, my childhood before my dad got sick was just the most amazing. I mean, it was, I couldn't argue, I couldn't complain about anything. I had two parents that loved me. I had a baby sister. I had friends around me. We celebrated Christmas and all the holidays with my grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins, and it was really that kind of perfect family almost. And that's what I thought life was supposed to be like.
Yeah, and what would be the most treasured memory that you'd have of your father at that time?
Yeah, so I grew up just loving muscle cars. My dad had a 66 Chevelle before I was born, and I kind of grew up around that. And I think my favorite memories of him were just being under the hood with him, you know, tinkering around with the engine, going for rides with him. Um, that's where my love of cars came from, was from him, and that's probably one of my fondest memories of him and being around him and stuff. It was just the car scene, going to car shows. We went to the local drag races and stuff. That was heaven for me.
Mm. So it sounds I when you talk about that, it just kind of hits me as something that is really special because I know my husband's really into cars. My father was into cars. His father was into cars. So I
Yeah.
know that kind of experience of that. So when your father was diagnosed, you were 11 years old. What
Mhm.
changed for you then?
It really changed everything in my life. Not at first. It took a while because Parkinson's is kind of it's a progressive disease. It starts out really small with just like a small finger shaking, but it progressively gets worse. But my my attitude kind of changed. It went from more, you know, from being happy go lucky to kind of like I started getting scared. I started getting a little angry. Um, you know, why is, and kids are like, you know, why is this happening to my dad? You know, it's not happening to everybody
Mm,
else's dad, but it's happening to my dad. And so as the years would progress into my teens and stuff, I could see my dad getting worse. And so it was like it was taking little bits of him away from him, which kind of upset me. And so that was the whole idea of like, you know, my anger, I think, was the first thing that really hit. And that's the thing that started to kind of grow from there. And as he got worse through the years, my anger got worse. And that just, it changed the whole course of my life. And I started making decisions based on that, in not taking this chance, not taking that choice. It changed a lot when I was a kid. It
yeah.
didn't, like I said, it didn't at first. It probably was like 13, 14 when I really started to kind of notice things were starting to change a little bit. And then by late teens, it was just like, yeah, that's when my parents were starting to have problems. And that just changed a lot of other things too.
Mm. And how did it change that relationship with your father as a teenager?
In parts, it kind of made me closer to him, but at the same time, it was I didn't know how to handle it really because it's like you're a kid, you don't know how to handle your dad being sick because growing up, your father is supposed to be like the strongest, most toughest, most you know protective person in the world, and with this disease, you take little bits of him being pulled away, and so you're kind of like you know you're trying to make sense of it all, but at the same time, it's like, how do I handle this? And so, me and my dad got really close when my parents divorced. I was about 17, so I became kind of his caregiver a little bit there. He was still working, but his career had changed, and so it was just me and him for a long time. So we still went to car shows and drag races and stuff like that, and but it went from him being the parent to me kind of taking care of him and watching out for him, kind of
Yeah.
going over the bills, kind of taking care of the utilities, stuff like that. So the
Yeah.
revolt, the roles kind of reversed, which was
And
something
that's
I'd
hard
never.
for it. That's really hard for a teenager. Well, let's take a quick chocolate break so that I can enjoy some of my beautiful chocolate. And let's see who's sponsoring the show and helping to make it happen. And while we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.
When I hit perimenopause, all I heard was doom and decline until I took a sacred pause and I went searching for women who are radiant after menopause, like Dr. Christiane Northrup, Dr. Vandana Shiva, and the late Dr. Gladys McGarry, still shining at 103. In this book, I share their stories and wisdom and the magic that menopause truly holds. 7 Wonders of Menopause is a sacred reminder. You're not ending, you're returning. Available at independent bookshops in Australia and Amazon around the world.
Did you know that only 30% of speakers are women and that only 13% of panels feature women? In order to change that, there is now a directory at womenspeakers.com.au where you can go and search for a speaker. We also have groups on Facebook and LinkedIn under the name Australian Women Speakers, where you can just go and post about your event and women will respond.
And we're here today with Aaron Watts, and we're talking about his life and the way that his father's Parkinson's affected him. And Aaron, how did your father, as you grew into a man, how did that alter your life with your father having Parkinson's?
Um, well, like I said, it was me kind of becoming kind of like a parent to him because I was the caregiver and I had to take care of the things a little faster than I wanted to, and that kind of took over priority. Um, I kind of wanted to pursue a career, but I wasn't sure what, and that kind of got put on the back burner. Um, but yeah, it turned into kind of the reverse roles, going from the child to actually becoming kind of a parent because he was progressively getting worse, and by my 20s, he was starting to develop more serious issues, and so that kind of became my priority in life.
Yeah. So when did you first realize that you would stop building your own life and put everything on hold?
Once my parents divorced, I think I kind of like, since I don't have my mom there, because my mom was the one that was taking care of him. But then when they divorced, my mom and my sister left. So it was just me and her. And that was kind of the first time where like, I'm on my own. I don't have any help from anybody else. So I gotta put all my effort into this. And, you know, part of it was I have to take care of my dad, but part of it was like, it goes back to that anger. And I felt angry that my mom left my dad because she was supposed to be there, because I was raised with the old fashioned, the values of being there in sickness and in health. That was instilled in me as a kid. And when they left, I kind of got angry about that. And so the whole idea of of taking care of my dad kind of angered me because now I have this responsibility. So I'm not going to try to better my life right now because this is not how life is supposed to be. That's not how I thought it was going to be. So I kind of like, that was kind of my path at the moment.
Yeah. And did you feel like that weight of the responsibility was almost made you feel guilty for thinking about what else you might be able to do in your life?
Yeah, it definitely played in my guilt. Um, but I think it fed my anger more because it's like
Mhm.
why was life doing this to us? Why was life doing this to my dad? Um, but yeah, guilt was definitely there because I wanted to do something with my life, but at the same time, I was like, it's like, how dare life do this to me? It's kind of the
Yeah.
whole blaming myself and blaming everything else, and again, feeding into that anger. You know,
Now, what was the story you were telling yourself that made it seem like it was the right thing to do to put your life on hold?
before my dad got sick, my parents, I have to give it to both my mom and dad. They really established a good foundation for what it is to be a good person. That you put family first, you put your loved ones first. Um, that was kind of the crux of it. That I have to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's about family more than anything.
Yeah. So do you think people saw you as an angry person? What do you think people were seeing when from the outside at that point of who you were and what you were about?
Well, the funny thing is when I was talking to my buddies a few weeks ago, because we're doing kind of a podcast too, and I was telling them like, yeah, I tried to hide so much of the anger and pain I was going through. And my buddy, who's known me since before my dad was sick, he was like, yeah, we could all see it. And I'm just kind of like, really? I tried to hide that. And he was like, no, dude, we all knew what you were going through. So I could, now that I look back at like Christmas and parties and stuff like that I go to, I'd be kind of off to the corner, but I'd try to put on a happy face. But people saw it, and that was kind of an eye opener when my buddy said, no, we all saw it. And now it kind of makes me look back and go, man, I guess everybody saw what I was going through. And it was kind of frustrating and embarrassing at the same time, but also it was kind of like, I'm finally I'm finally dealing with this stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing all these podcasts. Like I'm I want to tell my story. I want to get it out there.
Yeah. So did it affect your relationships with your friends at that time?
I think the only thing it never really affected was my friendships. Um, I've got 4 or 5 guys that I grew up with that my dad knows, and we're kind of like kids, his sons too.
Yeah.
I grew closer to my friends because of my dad's disease and my parents divorcing, and they became kind of my rock in a sense. And so, when I was stressed out and angry about what was going on with my dad, I could go with them and go hang out with them, go to, car shows or whatever, and I could feel a little bit of a sense of relief. But those guys, they're my family to me. They're not blood related, but they're my brothers. I can honestly say I wouldn't be here right now today if it hadn't been for them.
Yeah. And I feel that when you're saying that, how those relationships meant so much. But probably partly because they had gone through that with you. They knew what was going on. I would think that that's all part of it.
Yeah,
Do you
they
think some of
seen
the
yeah, they seen
Yeah,
my
go
dad
ahead.
go through it, so oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, well, that really makes a difference if they've seen it, they know it. It's part of their story as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and they weren't in the same household, but they grew up with my dad, so they seen the struggles and, the tough, the really dark moments that we went through. So they were there to see it all, and they've even when I went through my first marriage and my divorce, they were there. They stepped up, and I didn't have to ask permission or ask for any favors or anything like that. They just stood up and said, "Hey, you need some help? We got your back," And that's something I'm very blessed with.
Yeah. And that's the power of relationships. It's really important for us to find those people who will stand by us regardless of what's going on in life. And I know I have some friends like that as well who will sit with me in the darkest moments. So let's have another quick chocolate break, and we'll be back in a moment after we've seen who supports the show.
Introducing 123 Read to Me. We give books to children who don't have books so they can succeed. Help us give away books to supported playgroups, kindergartens, schools, community events. Come and sort books. Donate money. $5 equals one book in the hand of a child. Because just one book a day creates clever, kind and confident kids. 123 Read to Me. If this interests you, let's talk.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Putting invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of passion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that lasts. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose: Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Putting on Amazon.
And we're back with Aaron Watts, and we're still talking about his family, his life as a child of a Parkinson's sufferer, and how it's changed his life. So, Aaron, what helped you to start letting go of some of the anger that you were feeling?
To be honest, it's when my dad passed. I think because he was at peace, I was okay with letting go of that anger. Um, it was sad, but I knew he was at peace, so I was like, I don't have to be angry at life anymore because life is not punishing my dad. And that was the moment where I was kind of like, this is a new start for me. I mean, I was almost 45 years old, and I was like, I'm in my mid 40s. Now I've got a chance to start something new. I don't have to walk through life being angry anymore. And I still struggle with it a little bit today. There's still residual effects of that, but it's not nearly what it was, 15 years ago. But he passed in 2017. So ever since then, life's been changing in pretty good ways for me.
What has it been like learning to build a life after spending so many years putting your life on hold?
It's been exciting, but I try not to be hard on myself, and I try not to look back and try not to regret things. You know, I try not to be hard on myself because I spent 40 years being so hard on myself. And it really is. It really is difficult not to feel guilty about what's happened and what hasn't happened. And yeah, I can get emotional about stuff like that because it really hits down deep. But yeah, I it's a
Yeah.
growing experience for me because this is
Mm.
the last 8 years or so have been really a new existence for me because I'm starting to let go of a lot of things, and I'm starting to realize a lot of things. And so it's a roller coaster ride for me right now, but I think it's going in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's fabulous. One of the things to me that's important about listening to your story is that when we see people who are carrying anger or behaving in certain ways, we don't know the story behind that. So if somebody had have seen you as a young man and seen you behaving in and could pick up that you were angry, we don't know what that anger's about unless we listen to it, do we?
Yeah, I think what you see in the world when people are lashing out, they're being angry, they're being something triggered it. It could have been a childhood trauma, it could be losing somebody, a loved one. It could be like for me, my dad getting sick when I was 11 and seeing the progression of his disease. Um, people that have loved ones that have cancer, there's something happened in their life that's triggered them to be more angry and aggressive in life. And it'll affect everything in your life because of it, and unless you can deal with it or take care of it, it's going to affect every aspect of your life. And I know from experience that it does.
Yeah. If there was one thing you wish people understood about one another before they made these assumptions, what would it be?
um don't don't make an assumption based on your first interaction with somebody or how they look, because you don't know their story. Everybody has a story, and I bet you know a lot of money that people will probably surprise you. You know, it's people looked at me, and when they find out my story, it's surprising. And it's like, wow, I never would have guessed that. I never would have guessed this. You know, you got to be a little bit more understanding of people because you don't know their history and their past. Because my dad got sick, it wasn't my fault. What he went through, it wasn't my fault. I had, my dad taken away from me. There's people that have dads that are still alive and healthy and stuff, and they're lucky. They've never had to experience that kind of trauma. Because it'll change people. If you have a heart and you see a loved one suffering, it's going to affect you. That's just how the way it is.
It certainly does. It certainly does affect you, and it's very hard to go on in life and act as if nothing's changed, because things change and they do affect us, and people can't see why when they see us, because we don't. Yeah, a lot of
It's
us
about
wear our
being more
hearts on our
kind to
sleeve.
people.
Yeah, yeah. Be generous in your reactions and the way you treat people. It's really important.
Yeah,
But
because I
every
mean
week,
that person could be your best friend, in a month, 2 months. You never know.
yeah, that's right, and that's why I encourage people to sit down and have a chocolate and coffee with someone and try to learn what their story is. And certainly that's what this week's Brew the Change challenge is. So that was a great segue. Thanks, Aaron.
Oh, no problem.
So this week, have a conversation with someone whose story you don't know, but this time choose someone you've already formed an opinion about. Maybe they're angry, maybe they're quiet, maybe they're difficult to understand, but instead of making another assumption, spend a little time getting to know their story. You may discover there's far more beneath the surface than you first imagined. So that's exactly what we just said. Just listen to people and listen to people's stories, because, like, your story is just an amazing thing. And where has this led you now? What are you doing with this story?
So, because my dad was sick, I stayed in Washington State all my life. Once he passed, I kind of opened myself up to kind of try a new path.
Yeah.
I met a wonderful woman. We're now married, but it also allowed me to kind of go, I'm going to get out of Washington State. So in 2020, me and my wife moved down to Texas, and it's been a great ride ever since. Right now, I've kind of started exploring podcasting. I've got a couple of those going. I actually started writing books, something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid, but it just never really manifested that way. The biggest dream me and my wife have right now is to open our own pet ranch rescue, because I have to thank my wife that she's the one that gave me more compassion for animals and dogs. And we have 5 dogs right now. They're all rescues. We help out local rescues and fostering and stuff like that. So that's really where my dreams have come true. That's one thing too, is just follow your dreams.
Fantastic. And where can people get in touch with to find out, maybe reach out to your podcast? How can they get in touch with you?
Just go on YouTube. That's the only place I'm at right now. It's Watts Unplugged at YouTube.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Aaron, for coming and sharing your story. It has been a real pleasure to get to know you and understand your story. So until next time, and let love be the loud voice.
Thank you for having me.